Always look for food with the bordbia quality mark, so you can relax and enjoy it more.
Christmas is surely one of the busiest times of the year in the kitchen, and I've got a packed programme for you today. I've always wanted to include goose on my Christmas programmes because it's a traditional bird that I hope becomes as popular again as it once was. It has a rich dark meat, and if you've never tasted it before, you should definitely give it a try. But of course, I'm doing a turkey recipe as well. It's an Asian-inspired satay, which offers you a different way to cook turkey, an ingredient which I think you should use throughout the year, not just at Christmas. And if you want recipes for the traditional roast turkey or the buttermilk brined turkey crown, they're available online. A cheese board is a lovely way to finish a meal, and I like to serve some things alongside the cheese. Homemade oat biscuits are so easy to make and very Moorish. Candied walnuts add a sweet crunch to the cheese, and you can add them to salads and even Brussels sprouts. Chutneys are a traditional complement to the cheese, and a chutney made with fig and cranberries has a seasonal flavour. I'm going to begin with 2 ideas for starters: crispy goat's cheese with roasted beetroots, cranberries and some candied walnuts, and a luxurious silky lobster bisque, which makes use of the lobster shell as well as the lobster meat to give you maximum value from a special ingredient. So the first thing I need to do for the crispy goat's cheese salad is the breadcrumbs. And we're going to get lots of flavour and texture. So these are some toasted pine nuts. Now you're toasting nuts on a dry pan just for a minute or two and keep moving them. No oil, nothing else. It releases the natural oils from them. Put them into the food processor, or you can chop them by hand. These are some white sesame seeds, and I'm going to sprinkle them into the breadcrumbs. And then these are some stale breadcrumbs. So a great way of using up some breadcrumbs, which are maybe a couple of days old. So I'm going to put this all into a bowl. So first of all, the breadcrumbs, plenty of that. And then the lovely pine nuts, which we have here. Sesame seeds, again in here. And then I want to get a little bit of colour and also some flavour, and I'm going to chop some parsley, flat leaf parsley here. So I've just picked off the little leaves. So you could put a little bit of sage, a little bit of basil, even a little bit of thyme. Lots of herbs work really well with the goat's cheese. So bring this over, just using the knife, and then just straight into your crumbs. So just using a spoon, just kind of mix it all. You have your breadcrumbs, the parsley. So there's lovely colour there from the parsley, lovely texture from the sesame seeds, and also the pine nuts. So we're going to use a goat's cheese. You can use Centola. We have a local one called Carleggy in Cavan, and it's a log. So what we're going to do is just with a sharp knife and a hot knife, this is really important. So we're just going to have a little jug of boiling water, using a small knife, and roughly cut it about maybe, say ½ inch. Lovely and soft, look at that. And then just with one slice, we're just going to put it into the flour, but I'm going to cut one more slice. So just lift it up. It's a little bit fragile, as you can see. And then toss it all over. There's a little bit of seasoned flour. And I just have 1 egg and just a little bit of milk. So toss this. So the flour is important because it helps the egg stick and it keeps the moisture in whatever you're crumbing. Okay, so let's keep this hand dry here and then lift this. So make sure you can see the egg is completely coating the whole of the goat's cheese. And that's it. How nice does that look? You see the lovely parsley and that. And then onto some kitchen paper. Onto a tray, if you want to have a little plate here. And you could do this a day or 2 ahead. You could actually freeze it if you want to, but normally if you keep it in the fridge, it'll be perfect. So let's just do the last one. So you just lift it and then just simply put it onto the plate. The best way to cook these is in the deep fat fryer. Now I have a small one here behind me, just with some rapeseed oil. It's at 190 degrees. And what I have is just the fryer nice and hot. So while they're in the fryer, it only takes a minute or 2. I'm going to talk to you about the beetroot. And beetroot is a classic combination with goat's cheese. What we've done is roast it with the skin on, Put a little bit of rapeseed oil and some balsamic vinegar and some thyme. What I like to do, especially if you're doing it for quite a few people, wear gloves when you're dicing it, because the actual juice from the beetroot will bleed onto your hands. So all I've done with a good sharp knife is cut it into nice big chunks. And then I've actually tossed it in some of the roasting juice. So that would be a little bit of rapeseed oil and vinegar, and it works really well. So skin on. These took about an hour and a half, and it really depends on the size. And how you test when they're actually cooked, get a cocktail stick or get the point of the knife. When it's soft, they will be cooked. And you can see the sesame seeds, the parsley, it looks so well. The texture, you'll have a really creamy cheese and a very interesting crust. So I'm going to serve this up now. First of all, our beetroot, just onto the plate with the nice balsamic and the oil. It's a nice arrangement of this. We're going to serve this with some candied walnuts. So this is just a little bit of maple syrup, a tiny little bit of butter. I just arrange that on top. This is some dried cranberries, so just sprinkle them. So we have some lovely little salad leaves here that we grow in Black Lion. So thank you to my gardener, Kevin. Does a lot of work, so we need to really respect what he does and use what's in season. I think that's so important. Now, I'm going to just dress this at the last minute. When you're dressing any kind of dressing, a little bit of oil, a little bit of vinegar, just a very simple dressing. And then our goat's cheese. And this is a really quick, simple starter. One or two. Two is quite generous, I think, for that size, but just for this, I think we're going to serve two. So that's my crispy goat's cheese with the roast beetroot, candied walnuts and cranberries. Here's another idea for a very special start to serve over Christmas: Lobster Bisque. Twist and remove the claws and cut the lobster in half lengthways. Then open it up and remove the tail meat. Use the back of the knife to crack open the claws and remove the meat. Chop the meat and set to one side. Heat some oil and butter in a large pan and stir in the diced carrots, fennel, celery and onion. Add the lobster shell and bouquet garni. Then cover and cook for 10 to 15 minutes until the vegetables are softened. Add some brandy, flambe if you wish. Then tip in some tomatoes cut into quarters and cook for 5 minutes. Add tomato puree, white wine and stock and bring to a simmer. Then cook this gently for 30 minutes until slightly reduced. Season to taste, then pass the soup through a fine sieve into a deep saucepan. Add some butter and the reserved lobster meat, keeping a little of the meat back to garnish. Whiz until blended, then put some lobster meat into the bottom of a soup bowl. Ladle the soup around the lobster, add a swirl of cream and finish with a few micro herbs, a little oil and cracked black pepper. This really is a delicious and elegant soup and perfect to serve at Christmas. When I was training as a chef, I worked in Germany, in Berlin, in the Grand Hotel. And one of their restaurants was known as the Golden Goose. And their speciality was roast goose, red cabbage and a lovely honey and clove sauce. So I'm going to show you this recipe, which is one of my favourites. Traditionally, years ago in Ireland, goose was the #1 meat at Christmas, and now turkey has taken over for it. And if you want any of my turkey recipes, you can go online and find them. For me, when I cook for my family, I always do the roast goose and the turkey, so I'm keeping everyone happy. Maybe I spoil them a bit. Goose is a rich meat. We're going to cook it on a trivet, and like any meat, whether it's the goose or the turkey, you bring it to room temperature. That's really important. So it's more or less the same technique for the turkey too, as well as the goose. I always put orange and lemon into the cavity of the bird. So this is a 4.5 kilo goose that I'm using here. So we're just packing it with orange. We're going to put in some herbs. Like turkey, goose, they all love herbs: thyme, sage, rosemary, but thyme is fantastic. So just get that right in there. Pack it right in. And then a good tip for you when you're roasting any kind of meat, I always put a little bit of water on the tray. And what happens here, the steam gives you really moist meat. That's really important. It's also going to help render the fat, because traditionally the goose is a very, very fatty meat, so it is. So you need to render that. Now I have a little bit of string here, and we're going to tie this up just to help to keep the bird together. So a little bit of salt, a little bit of black pepper, and then some oil. So I'm going to use some rapeseed oil. So if you're doing this for your turkey, you'd put some streaky rashers on it, which I love, and again some salt and pepper and a little bit of butter. So this is going to go into the oven, and the oven is preheated at 220. It's a fan oven, so it's quite a hot oven. This bird is 4.5 kilos, and it's going to take about 2 hours, 40 minutes to cook. And then for the last half an hour, I'm going to brush it with honey. So I'm just going to put this into the oven. So for the first hour, I don't cover it, and after that, I will cover it, but I want the skin to be lovely golden brown and crispy. I am going to show you a really lovely sauce to serve with this. So let me go through the ingredients. Cloves. Cloves is a great spice at Christmas. A little bit of balsamic, so this is where the sharpness is going to come in. And then some sweet soya sauce, and the proper name for this is called ketchup mayonnaise. So we want to get it nice and sweet and sour. So first of all, I'm going to put a little bit of brown sugar, some honey, and this is an important ingredient, it's tomato ketchup. It gives lovely fruitiness to the sauce. A spoonful of this. The last element of this is a tiny little bit of beef stock. And we're just going to literally bring this to the boil, and we're going to let this simmer. Now I need to just whisk this. So that needs to reduce. A little touch of pepper, and that'll take probably 5-6 minutes, thereabouts, until it's nice and thick. So that's a homemade beef stock, so we don't put any salt into it. So one final whisk. I have a lovely turkey recipe for you now, and this is a satay. Just get that nice and hot. So we're just going to cut the baby corn in half. So just pile them all together and then just cut them like this. This is just the quickest way of doing it. Bring that over to the side, and then I like to cut the peppers not lengthways, crossways. I think this is one, it's not too spicy. There's a little bit of sweet chili sauce. Again, it's fragrant. That's the best way to describe this. You can do this in a wok if you want to. I'm using a nice wide base pan for this, which works well. So immediately when they go in, you hear that sizzle. So every so often, just throw your eyes over the sauce. It's reducing beautifully. Don't put a lid on it, because it's what we call a reduction sauce. 2 cloves of garlic, crush them. Just keep moving it around so that the garlic in particular doesn't burn. First of all, I'm going to put in my dark soya. How thick and rich that is. Then we'll put in the sweet chili sauce. Just let that fall in there. And then some brown sugar. Don't have it too sweet. It should be really fragrant. And if you put too much sugar in, you add more lime juice into it. Don't forget that. Now, the peanut butter, loads of this. And then our coconut milk. So just stir this through. It's a great crowd pleaser, this, because you can make this 3 to 4 days ahead, and then you can just put in your meat. It just takes a minute or two just to mix through the peanut butter. So my honey and clove sauce looks ready. I just need to taste it. I don't want it too thick. And when you use a good stock, look at that. Oh my God. It's sweet, it's sour, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So back on to our sauce here. We need to put the juice of a lime. So squeeze that, half a lime, and then another one. Now stir that through. And that's our satay, as simple as that. You can, towards the end, chop in a little bit of coriander if you want to. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some turkey. And this is some lovely slow roasted, quality assured Irish turkey. If you're going to use raw turkey, which is perfect too, what I would recommend is you cut it into chunks or little strips and just pan fry. Get a little bit of colour and then cook it in the sauce. So I want nice big chunks. So big cubes of the turkey. And we need to just literally warm this through. That's all we're doing. So your sauce you can have made in the fridge, warm it up, and then some turkey. So you have the crunchy vegetables, you have the succulent turkey, and then you have your fragrant sauce. So what I like to do is just put a lid on this, and it'll just heat up a little bit quicker, so it will. Now we're going to serve up our goose. So we have the goose roasted. So when you're roasting the goose, it's really, really important. There'll be a little bit of fat coming off the tray, so drain that off. Keep that for your roast potatoes. So to serve with the roast goose, I have some beautiful roasted vegetables. Parsnips. They're one of the most underused vegetables. Cut them into big chunks, some leeks too, and you just simply drizzle them with a little of oil and you roast them. Now, just to cut through the richness, I've just segmented some oranges, so I just have them here. Just a couple of little orange pieces, and I'm just going to arrange that. So with any rich bird like this, The citrus, the orange, especially in the cavity, will cut through the richness. So just a little touch of that. And it's nice and colourful too. You can put pomegranate seeds if you want to. So I'm just going to move that out of the way. You need good muscles on you. And then we have some stuffing. And the stuffing is using some apricots, again, some softened onion, a little bit of herbs, so sage, flat leaf parsley, breadcrumbs. And we've just baked that off in the oven. That's the lovely stuffing. So next, the red cabbage. And this is braised in the food processor, blended, and then what you do is cook it down with some apple juice and spices, a little bit of vinegar and sugar, so it's nice and tangy. But that's the front. And then our sauce. So small little sieve, just over a jug, just to remove any of the whole cloves. Nah. And that should be really nice and sweet, sour, that kind of thing that works really well and cuts through the richness of the goose. So, one down, one to go. This is our satay. I usually serve this with noodles. And then make sure you get lots of the vegetables and of course your turkey. So nice big chunks there. So this is definitely a recipe that I think all the family will enjoy. It's sweet, it's aromatic, it's not in any way spicy, and it's full of flavour. And then, of course, our beautiful coriander. And then the last thing, just for a little bit more texture, is some chopped peanuts. But these are optional. So that's two very different recipes for you. My traditional roast goose with the honey and clove sauce, and then the Asian-inspired turkey satay. There's nothing nicer than a cheese platter at any time of the year, and particularly if you have really lovely Irish cheeses, which are fantastic. Bring them to room temperature, and it's a lovely way to finish off a meal. And what we have here is a Cashel Blue one. You can use a Crozier Blue, which is made with sheep's milk. This is made with cow's milk. You can use a Wicklow Blue if you want to. So there's lots of lovely blue cheeses throughout the country. We have a nice Duras cheese here. Smoked cheese, which is really interesting, and this is a Gobeen smoked cheese made in Cork. Goat's cheese. This is a fantastic, this is Bluebell Fall goat's cheese. We have a local one here in Cavan, Corleggy cheese and Centola. So there's lots of lovely goat's cheese. It's just lovely and creamy and mild. This one, there's little specks of herbs if you can see through it. So the final cheese on the board is the mature cheddar cheese, and this is from County Waterford. 15 Fields is the name of it. It's absolutely gorgeous. 12 months matured, and I love a nice mature cheddar on a cheese board. So I'm going to show you how to prepare just the accompaniments. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you how to make the chutney. We're going to put in some crème de cassis. This is gorgeous if you're making mulled wine or you're putting it into a trifle. It's absolutely delicious. So put this in. It's a blackcurrant liqueur. It's high in fruit and low in alcohol. And remember, when you cook this out, you're cooking out the alcohol. Some balsamic vinegar, and this is just a regular cooking 3-year-old balsamic in here. You could use sherry vinegar, but I love the tartness of the balsamic vinegar. A little bit of sugar. That goes in there. And then if you're a wee bit stuck for time, you can chop these. But I'm going to just throw them in whole, just make life easy. So we need to cook this, pour some cold water. You could put apple juice into this, you could put some cranberry juice, so you can mix it up a little bit. And then our figs. So put them all in there. And what I love, I think, is the texture, the kind of little seeds within the figs give great texture, sweetness, and also when you're serving it with the cheese. So that goes in there. And then our dried cranberries. So no need to use the fresh cranberries. When you get the dried cranberries, they're a bit more expensive, but they're fantastic and they're delicious in a stuffing. Just give it a stir, bring it to the boil. You can see there, you can see the full figs, you can see the cranberries, all that there. They're going to soften, and that takes about 20-25 minutes. You let it cool down. So I have some done here, and look at that. It's soft and the figs kind of plump up. So what we do is just let that cool down, blend it in the food processor, literally for a minute or two. Add a little bit of water if you find it's a wee bit thick, and there we go. This is what you have. This is the exact recipe there, and it's lovely, it's rich, it's sweet, it's sour. It's just everything that works so well with the gorgeous cheese. And it doesn't take away from any of the cheeses, it actually enhances it. Fantastic. Now, the cookies. So I'm going to use the food processor for this, which is easy. We're using some Flavin's oats. I'm going to put it in here. The first thing we need to do is just to blitz this, just to break down the texture. So what we're doing, we're still going to have the texture of the oats. Okay, so it's quite a dry mix this. We're going to put in some flour, just some regular plain flour, a little bit of sweetness, some sugar, So if you want these as a traditional oat cookie sweeter, you'd obviously increase the sugar. We just have a small amount in there. Some bicarbonate of soda. And then we have some butter. And it's really important that the butter's at room temperature. Now this is going to take a minute or two just to kind of mix through. Now, so you just take it out, and then this is the mixture here. So I want to show you just a really good tip when you're making this. So if you find this mixture a little bit dry, just a spoonful of cold water will just bring it all together. Now, okay, so just bring it all together. It goes everywhere. And then just press it. And we're going to shape it into little sausages. So this will keep in the fridge perfectly, and you can freeze it. So you can have these cookies any time of the year. Probably divide it into two. And then what we do is just shape it. Just roughly with your hands. Use the cling film. That's going to help you. You're kind of looking for that kind of sausage shape. Lots of that cling film. And this is it here. So that's half the mixture. Just makes it easier when you're cutting them, which I'm going to show you now in a minute. This is one which we've made. So we would have made this the night before. Now I'm just going to show you how to shape it. And you'll find when you cut this, it's a little bit crumbly. Whenever I bake cookies, I always use parchment paper because nothing ever sticks to it. It's fantastic. A little tray like this, and I'm just going to literally take off the end and then just peel that off. Don't forget to remove the cling film, trust me. Now, cut it, just remember, the thicker you cut these, the longer they take to cook. So just remember that. So roughly about, say, what, half an inch? And if they crumble, which sometimes they do, and these will probably, you don't panic. You just shape them, reshape them with your hands. See, like that? So that's what we're looking for there. Onto the parchment paper. And the same for this. So I'll just remove one. Now see the way that's beginning to crack. So just push it all together. So this recipe, you'll probably get about 24 of these, or a little bit more, depending on the thickness you cut them. That goes into the oven, and we're going to bake that at 200 degrees, and that's going to take anything from 12 to 15 minutes. So it's a good hot oven, parchment paper, nothing will stick. Then you let them cool down, and then you have your cookies, what I've shown you for the cheese. Last thing we're going to serve with our cheese is our candied walnuts. So when you get the whole walnuts, just show you here, they're a little bit more expensive. But you can do this with pecan nuts, you can do this with pistachio nuts, or also hazelnuts. So heat the pan, maple syrup, or you can use honey, and then some butter. So we're going to melt the butter there, and then we're going to just throw in the walnuts. So spread them all out, and this literally takes a minute or two. It's so easy. Pine nuts work really well with this, but I definitely think my two favourite nuts is the pecan nuts, and the walnuts are gorgeous. So you just want to get a nice little kind of a coating, and then they begin to caramelize. So just shake them. Just give this a nice little stir, and we're nearly there. Keep the pan nice and hot, and you know, really just a minute or two, and that's it. Because if you overcook this, they will burn. We just want them nicely golden brown. So what I usually do with the candied walnuts is just let them cool down, either on the pan, or you can get a tray, you know, with parchment paper, let them go cold, then put them in a little Kindler jar, or serve them straight away. So that's my three accompaniments, our beautiful oat cookies. And if you can see them, they're just really crumbly, melting them out. Butter gives the flavour. They're so good. And then we have our chutney with the fig, dried cranberries, a little bit of balsamic, and then our candied walnuts. I know you're going to have a cheese board to remember.
Always look for food with the bordbia quality mark, so you can relax and enjoy it more.